God is good. Thank you for standing for freedom. We do appreciate that, and it's necessary. Our next speaker then is Dr. Paul Alexander. Please give it up for my brother.
Hey, how are you guys? And I'm so happy that the center allowed us here, and we came up from Hagerstown, and I think Brian and they made some new announcements last night as to where the People's Convoy is going, and likely how it can work at a state level. This is an example of how it can work. And I'm not part of the leadership, but I'm an academic scientist, a clinical epidemiologist, evidence-based medicine specialist. I work with Dr. Corey. We've been on this convoy since Adelanto in California, and I was part of the, I provided scientific support to the Canadian truckers in Ottawa, and well, it was a beautiful thing. The Canadian truckers started this, and I think before we go further, I have to say, let's give it up to the Canadian truckers. Look, and you know, yes, thank you, Canada, and the Prime Minister was very brutal in the reaction to the truckers there, and at least we've had, I've been to the Senate and the House. We've had meetings with Senator Ron Johnson, very gracious to have us, Ted Cruz. We spoke with Joni Ernst, Josh Hawley, Senator Hawley. We've met with Jim Jordan in the Congress. We've met with his transport subcommittee. So at least in the United States, there's the opportunity to talk, at least have a dialogue. Look, so I work with WHO, World Health and Pan American Health Washington as evidence-based scientist for them at the beginning of the pandemic, as a specialist for them. Then I went to the Trump administration at Health and Human Services as their senior COVID pandemic advisor. The reality about it is that what was asked of the truckers and of the society, particularly the truckers and bread and butter people, was, we were saying, these governments and these task force leaders and the policy developers were saying that you have to choose between putting bread on your table versus taking, which we knew at a very early on, an ineffective vaccine. And that was wrong, because the truckers stood up and said, you know, based on my gut instinct and my common sense, something doesn't make sense here, because we are seeing that so many people are getting infected after the vaccine, and not only that, besides being effective, it was not properly safe. So I might be COVID recovered as a trucker. I have the right to, the Constitution does not have a space for exemption for the virus. So I have a right to make my own decision for my own bodily integrity. So the trucker was right. And persons like myself, Dr. Corey, Dr. Roger Hodkinson in Canada, Dr. Byron Brittle, we stood up and we said, no, we have to stand with the trucker and explain to the society that the trucker has 100% of the science on their side. It is the government and the COVID pandemic people, the task forces, who are wrong. And they were suffering the truckers, particularly this started in Canada, where the Canadian government made a policy decision on mid-January of this year, where the Canadian truckers, when they leave Canada, entered like Pennsylvania or Detroit, dropped the load, on return, they would have to be vaccinated. And that was wrong, or be 2 weeks quarantine. So that's where this battle started, and now the US is there, and now Pennsylvania is there. Look, I don't want to get into the politics. I know of this good senator. I like his policies. I like his understanding. I appreciate his understanding and grasp of COVID and the challenges and what the society has faced in Pennsylvania. So it was no issue for me to come here. We lost 3 things due to this pandemic. We lost people due to the virus, no doubt. COVID presented a challenge to people with a median age of around 82, some underlying medical conditions, and that's a fact. But we also lost people. Most of the deaths were due to the devastation of the lockdowns and the school closure policies. That is what killed most of our people, and it was wrong, because we told them 1.5 years ago to open the society. And I have to be honest with you. In Washington, I can tell you, President Trump did fight. He did fight the task forces. He did fight them behind the scenes to open society and open schools. So I can say what I saw. The reality about it now is this, that this is how I'm going to leave this discussion. The trucker is correct. The problem here is we are dealing with a vaccine that has shown itself now. We have data from the UK, we have data from Scotland, from Denmark, from Sweden, from Finland, from Norway. We have data from the United States. The Barnstable, Massachusetts outbreak, Brown et al., showed us that the vaccine was a serious problem at that point for Delta. We had a study coming out right away from Riley Musma et al. In Wisconsin that showed us that the vaccinated and the unvaccinated were similarly infected. So it was showing us very early on that the vaccine was failing. It's completely failed on Omicron, BA1 subvariant, now the BA2. So the vaccine is ineffective. And I will end by saying the governments, those in public health, task forces, Dr. Fauci, Dr. Walensky, Dr. Francis Collins, all of the states of America need to
Chris Whitty, Patrick Vallance,
to keep this pandemic
fucking Matt
ongoing
Hancock,
for 100
Boris
years to
Johnson,
come.
Sajid fucking Javid,
Variant
lock
after
them
variant
all up.
arising, then with this non-sterilizing, non-neutralizing, suboptimal vaccine, we keep vaccinating people, and this will never end. It is not the virus at this point. We are trying to educate the government officials. It is the vaccine that is driving the emergence of the variants. And we must stop this vaccine. It has shown itself to not be... The vaccine is not safe. It was not properly tested, particularly for children. The parents need to understand, as I close, parents need to understand that AZAR and they gave the vaccine developers and all involved liability protection. That was a catastrophic mistake because none of these people, the CDC, the NIH, the FDA, none of Pfizer, Bola, Bancel, Moderna, none of them have any liability.
NHS, PHG, AstraZeneca.
If you put these vaccines into your child's arms, we run the risk of harming them, and we are going to harm, could be catastrophically, including mortality, children with these vaccines. We're already seeing the danger in young persons, in females with the CVST, the cerebral palsy, the Bell's palsy. We are seeing the deaths, the paralysis, the myocarditis, the pericarditis. So we need to stop these vaccines, and under no condition, until Fauci and Walensky puts liability protection on the table and say we are going to remove it, under no condition must a parent allow their child to be vaccinated with these vaccines. Thank you very much.
Well done, Paul.